Hey there! Tonight, we're going to take a soft, meandering walk through time, way, way back. Before cities, before language, before anyone thought to build a roof over their head. But don't worry, you don't need boots for this trip. Just breathe deeply, let the day fall away, and settle into your favorite corner of the blanket. Maybe there's a soft hum in the background. Maybe not. Either way, you're exactly where you need to be. Now, close your eyes, or don't. Let your mind drift to the edge of the Ice Age, about 12,000 years ago. The Earth is just beginning to warm up. Imagine the deep breath of a sleeping planet as glaciers slowly retreat, groaning like ancient giants in their sleep. The sky is pale and wide. The wind smells like cold stone and damp moss. And for the first time in tens of thousands of years, green things are starting to grow again. Humans, Homo Sapiens, that's us, have been around for a while already. We've survived blizzards, wild predators, and the kind of hunger that makes your bones feel hollow. We are tough, adaptable, clever little creatures. But we are also wanderers, trailing the seasons like shadows. Food doesn't grow in one place for long, so we follow it. Herds, berries, fish, roots. But this moment, this very slow glacial thaw, it's about to change everything. As the ice retreats, it reveals something we didn't expect. Stability. The same trees in the same places. Animals returning to familiar grazing grounds. Rivers that flow gently instead of freezing solid. And suddenly, for the first time, some humans begin to wonder, what if we stayed? It doesn't happen all at once. We're still sleeping under the stars, still roasting meat over smoky fires, still wrapping ourselves in furs and holding our children close to stay warm. But the seeds of settlement have been planted quietly, like the first wildflowers poking through the snow. In this warming world, we begin to pause, not just physically, but mentally. We start to notice things, that certain grasses grow taller than others, that animals pass through at certain times of year, that planting a seed sometimes leads to something better than luck. So much of early human life was shaped by silence, listening for danger, listening for the rustle of leaves or the cry of a child in the dark. But now, in this softer world, the silence grows deeper, reflective, almost peaceful. Tonight, as you lie there breathing softly, think of them, those early people staring into the flickering firelight. Their world was quieter than ours, but no less full. The stars they looked up at, the same ones you see now. Maybe they wondered the same things too. And just like that, we begin the story of civilization. Before we start, if you enjoy these quiet journeys, make sure to like the video, and I'd love it if you left a comment down below. Let me know where you're listening from, what time it is for you, and maybe share a few kind words or something good about your day. It's always nice to spread a little positivity out into the world. Imagine the first time someone placed a stone, not just to build a fire, but to mark a space that said, "This is where we live," not where we pass through, not where we hunt, but where we stay. It starts with a circle of stones, maybe just for a fire, maybe to keep the wind from stealing warmth. But then someone adds a shelter nearby. Sticks lean together like ribs, mud plastered between them. Primitive, yes, but it doesn't wash away in the rain. And that's new. Soon others build nearby. a neighbor, a cousin, a friend who once wandered, but now lingers. And just like that, a village begins. Not with ceremony, but with quiet repetition. Fires lit each night. Tools leaned against door frames. Children's laughter echoing between walls of woven reeds. There's no blueprint for these places. They grow like gardens, slow, tangled, shaped by habit more than design. One family plants grains near the stream. Another digs a pit to store food. Someone figures out how to shape clay into pots. And suddenly water doesn't always have to be fetched fresh. It can be kept. Saved. And that idea, saving, changes everything. With food stored, time stretches. Not every hour must be spent gathering. Now there's room for stories, for rituals, for tools carved not just for function, but for beauty. Beads, paint, bone flutes. A whole new world emerges, not just of things, but of thoughts. But staying still has its price. Walls are built not just to keep warmth in, but strangers out. Ownership becomes a new idea. This land, these tools, this grain. Before, the world was shared. Now it's divided. Subtly at first, but then more so. People begin to notice who has more pots, more meat, a bigger fire. Still, life is mostly humble, soft and slow. The village is noisy in the mornings. Roosters, grinding stones, splashing water. But by night, it hushes. Fires flicker behind thin walls. Crickets sing. And somewhere, a dog, one of the first companions, rests its head beside a human's foot, sighing into sleep. Because that's part of this too. The taming of the wild didn't just happen in soil or stone. It happened in hearts, between people and animals and the land itself. A fragile promise. If we care for this place, maybe it will care for us back. And under the same stars their ancestors once chased across continents, these early villagers dream new dreams. Dreams of permanence, of planting something and watching it grow. We didn't just stop moving. We started remembering. And that shift, quiet, internal, almost invisible, is what turned a cluster of huts into something more. A home, a community, a place with roots. Because once you stay, you start to notice. The way the light slants through the trees at harvest, which herbs soothe the belly, which stones make the best walls. Memory begins to matter. And memory, dear listener, is the first echo of civilization. In these early villages, we see the birth of something deeper than survival. Routine, pattern, the familiar rhythm of rising with the sun, grinding grain, shaping bread, and sharing it with the same faces day after day. There's comfort in that. But there's also friction. Staying put means bumping elbows, literally and figuratively. You begin to care about things like space, noise, fairness. Who gets the good patch of shade? Who helped rebuild the fence last storm? You learn about cooperation, sure, but also about conflict. Still, something keeps us there. Maybe it's the fire that never quite dies, the laughter that bounces between huts, the certainty that tomorrow someone will still be here to greet you. Maybe it's love. Yes, love. Not the kind with violins and whispered poetry, though who knows, but the quiet, solid kind. Love as provision, as presence, as someone bringing you water when your legs are tired, or watching your child, when you need a moment to breathe. It's also in grief, because staying means you see people leave and you feel it. You build the first graves. You mark the land not just with footsteps, but with memory. A village becomes a place where stories accumulate like driftwood, layered, tangled, shaping the shore of who you are. And as generations pass, those stories are carved into wood, painted on walls, whispered at twilight. You start to ask questions not just about today or tomorrow, but about before. Where did we come from? Why are we here? What lies beyond those hills? And all the while outside the village, the wild still waits. Forests still whisper. Animals still roam. But inside there's a circle of warmth, of rhythm, of us. We have become sedentary, but we are no less human for it. We are just beginning to understand the weight of staying. It didn't start with fanfare. There was no single moment where someone stood up and declared, "Let us farm." Instead, it happened the way most things do, by accident, and then by repetition. Maybe someone dropped a seed near a stream. Noticed weeks later, a little sprout where none had grown before. Maybe someone set aside a handful of barley, forgot about it, and came back to a patch of green. Small things. Quiet miracles. But the results? They changed everything. Farming didn't just feed us. It rewrote the story of our species. Because when you grow food, you don't chase it. You plan. You wait. You protect. You build fences, not to keep yourself in, but to keep the hungry world out. You start to understand time, not just as sunrise and sunset, but as seasons, as cycles. And suddenly, you're not just surviving with nature. You're surviving against it too. Agriculture became a kind of alchemy, turning dirt into dinner, sweat into storage, patience into plenty. But it was never easy. The earth gives, yes, but it also takes. Floods, droughts, pests, rot. Farming taught us hope and humility. With crops came new burdens. You need places to store the harvest, which means pottery, granaries, locks. You need tools that don't break. You need rules. Who plants what? Who eats what? Who decides when to reap? With food came structure, hierarchy, responsibility. We invented rituals to bless the soil, gods to guard the fields, myths to explain the rain. We danced, we chanted, we offered first fruits to the skies, not just because it was tradition, but because deep down we knew this life is fragile, and so is our place in it. But farming also gave us a strange kind of intimacy with the land. You begin to recognize it, not just as backdrop, but as partner. You know the slope of every hill, the mood of every wind, the way the soil changes from one corner of the field to the next. You belong to the land as much as it belongs to you, and with full bellies came something new, spare time. Not much, but enough. Enough for dreams, for crafts, for questions, for music and stories and symbols carved into stone, for wonder. Because once the world doesn't end every night with hunger, it has space to begin again, with curiosity. It didn't start with fanfare. There was no single moment where someone stood up and declared, "Let us farm." Instead, it happened the way most things do, by accident, and then by repetition. Maybe someone dropped a seed near a stream. Noticed weeks later, a little sprout where none had grown before. Maybe someone set aside a handful of barley, forgot about it, and came back to a patch of green. Small things, quiet miracles. But the results, they changed everything. Farming didn't just feed us, it rewrote the story of our species. Because when you grow food, you don't chase it. You plan. You wait. You protect. You build fences, not to keep yourself in, but to keep the hungry world out. You start to understand time, not just as sunrise and sunset, but as seasons, as cycles. And suddenly, you're not just surviving with nature, you're surviving against it too. Agriculture became a kind of alchemy, turning dirt into dinner, sweat into storage, patience into plenty. But it was never easy. The earth gives, yes, but it also takes. Floods, droughts, pests, rot. Farming taught us hope and humility. With crops came new burdens. You need places to store the harvest, which means pottery, granaries, locks. You need tools that don't break. You need rules. Who plants what? Who eats what? Who decides when to reap? With food came structure, hierarchy, responsibility. We invented rituals to bless the soil, gods to guard the fields, myths to explain the rain. We danced, we chanted, we offered first fruits to the skies, not just because it was tradition, but because deep down we knew this life is fragile, and so is our place in it. But farming also gave us a strange kind of intimacy with the land. You begin to recognize it, not just as backdrop, but as partner. You know the slope of every hill, the mood of every wind, the way the soil changes from one corner of the field to the next. You belong to the land as much as it belongs to you. And with full bellies came something new, spare time. Not much, but enough. Enough for dreams, for crafts, for questions, for music and stories and symbols carved into stone, for wonder. Because once the world doesn't end every night with hunger, it has space to begin again, with curiosity. Before there were factories or forges, there were fingers. Calloused, nimble, dirt-stained fingers, moving slowly but surely across stone, bone, and wood. Not just surviving anymore, but shaping, molding, imagining. Tools didn't just appear. They emerged, gradually, out of repetition, out of problem-solving, out of the age-old whisper. There must be a better way. A dull rock becomes a sharp edge. A stick becomes a lever. A basket, woven from reeds, becomes a lifeline, carrying seeds, water, warmth. These small transformations laid the foundation for everything that came after. Fire, once something we borrowed from lightning, was now something we made and kept, contained within clay hearths, used to cook, to forge, to protect. Its smoke curled upward like a signal to the stars. We're learning. And clay, oh clay. Simple, humble earth, shaped by hand, hardened by flame. It gave us pots, bowls, bricks. Storage became possible. So did construction, and with it, permanence. But tools weren't just functional, they were expressive. Etchings appeared, marks on stones, spirals on pottery, handprints on cave walls. We weren't just using our tools to build shelters, we were using them to leave traces of ourselves. Proof that we were here, that we felt something. Even medicine, crude though it was, emerged in these early days. A poultice made from crushed herbs, a salve for wounds, a carved bone with notches, perhaps counting moons or sickness or something we've forgotten. Technology back then was intimate. It wasn't wires and circuits, it was muscle and memory. Wisdom passed down through calloused hands, taught by firelight, shaped by trial and error and care. And the more we built, the more we dreamed. Axes cleared forests, ropes pulled stones, wheels turned, and slowly, villages turned into towns. With tools came trade. One village had grain, another obsidian, another salt. People began to move again, but not as wanderers, as messengers, as merchants, as carriers of stories and stone. And so humanity started to spin a wider web, a network of hands and hearts and hopes, all connected by the things we made. Because tools, in the end, aren't just things we hold. They're extensions of who we are and who we're becoming. We've built fires. We've shaped tools. We've stayed in one place long enough to see seasons change and return again. And now, for the first time, we start to write it down. Not quite as we know writing today. There are no alphabets yet, no novels on papyrus. But something is beginning. A symbol carved into stone, a pattern etched into bone, a scratch, a dot, a line. They mean something, or they will. Because when you live in one place long enough, memory matters more. And so language begins to evolve, not just spoken, passed from lips to ears, but captured, marked, preserved. We move from grunts and gestures to words that hold weight, words that last beyond the breath. Think of the first time someone looked at a child and gave them a name, and that name stayed. Or the first time someone carved the shape of a harvest moon into a rock to remember when to plant. Language isn't just for directions. It's for stories, for prayers, for records, for remembrance. It becomes the bridge between people, between generations, between the living and the gone. And with language, legacy follows, because now we can remember more than faces. We remember how things were done, why they mattered, what went wrong, and what we hope will go right. History begins not with kings and wars, but with grain tallies, birth records, songs about rivers, and warnings about floods. We begin to understand that our lives are part of something bigger, a thread in a vast, growing tapestry, and so we pass it on. Not just in stories, but in stone, in clay tablets, in drawings lit by torchlight. A hand reaches forward, not to take, but to teach. Legacy becomes the soft promise between generations. I was here, and now so are you. And tonight, as you rest, you are part of that same thread. The same stars shine above you that once shone above those early dreamers. The same earth holds you, the same silence. And maybe, just maybe, as you breathe into sleep, you can feel it, that long, slow heartbeat of humanity. Ancient, enduring, ever unfolding. And now, dear listener, we return, not to the wild fields of early humanity, but to your own quiet room, your soft bed, your stillness. You've just traveled across thousands of years, drifted beside glaciers, sat at the edge of the first firelight, and watched as humans dared to settle, to plant, to remember. You've heard the hush of old rivers, the rustle of woven mats, the tap of stones against clay. You've witnessed not battles or conquests, but the slow unfolding of something far more profound, the rise of belonging. And maybe tonight, as you close your eyes, you feel just a little more connected to the land, to the stars, to the long invisible thread of stories that led all the way to you. So rest easy now. Let the past hold your worries for a while. Let your breath slow. Let your mind settle, like ancient dust on the floor of a quiet home. Because everything you are started with a whisper, and that whisper has always, always been enough. Good night.